Senate will come to order. The chaplain, Dr. Black, will lead the Senate in prayer.
Let us pray. Eternal Father, strong to save, empower our lawmakers to serve you today, to solve problems and to remove impediments. Give them your higher wisdom as they seek you, the source of their strength. Lord, surround them with the shield of your divine approbation, so that no weapon formed against them will prosper. Almighty God, provide our senators strength for the adventures and challenges of these hours, inspiring them with the courage to oppose falsehood in all of its forms. May your truth, love, and power fill their hearts. We pray in your great name. Amen.
Thank you. Will you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you?
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business, with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each. I recognize the senator from Iowa.
Last week, 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard were tragically shot here on duties in Washington, D.C. They were attacked by an Afghan national brought here under the Biden administration. Sadly, Specialist Beckstrom has passed away. Staff Sergeant Wolf continues to fight for his life. May God bless both of them, and our prayers and mine are with them and their families. Also last week, an Afghan evacuee was arrested for threatening to bomb a building in Texas. The terrorists entered our country as part of a program called Operation Allies Welcome in the aftermath of the Biden administration's chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. Since 2021, I've warned the Biden administration, my congressional allies and colleagues, and the American public about the failure to vet Afghan evacuees. Unfortunately, the Biden administration was not honest with the American people about the program's vetting vulnerabilities. I asked then Director Wray about the program's national security. I asked the same of Director Patel of the FBI this year. And this year, Director of National Intelligence Gabbard told my office an important data point. Of the more than 100,000 Afghan evacuees as of August 2022, 1.6% had links to terrorism or other derogatory information. So when you take that 1.6%, that's over 1,600 people who, at that time of the Biden's disastrous evacuation, posed a potential threat to our homeland and to the American people. On July 8th of 2025, I came to this Senate floor and urged the current FBI and intelligence community leadership to aggressively investigate evacuees. In September this year, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Nome told my office as of August 12th, 2025, thousands of Operation Allies Welcome parolees were potential national security threats. As we have tragically witnessed, the Biden administration's failure to properly vet Afghan evacuees has serious consequences, and probably consequences we haven't seen beyond the killing last week. I think we should thank the Trump administration's efforts, and I thank them for responding to my oversight requests and their efforts to fix the Biden administration's failures. This senator's oversight work will continue. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
I recognize the Democrat leader.
Mr. President, I want to begin with a truly disgusting and alarming piece of news the American people got this morning. This morning, the former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, was released from prison after Donald Trump gave him a pardon. We all know that Donald Trump does a lot of hypocritical things. Almost every day, there's hypocrisy oozing from the White House. But pardoning one of the world's biggest drug traffickers is egregious, shameful, and dangerous, even for Donald Trump. It would be bad enough on its own for Donald Trump to pardon this horrible drug trafficker. But for him to pardon this drug lord while putting a quarter of our military in the Caribbean, right nearby Honduras, to fight drug trafficking makes an utter mockery of Donald Trump's supposed desire to root out all drug trafficking. Let's be clear of the facts. The person Donald Trump just pardoned was convicted of helping move 400 tons of cocaine to the United States. All the while, Trump blows up alleged drug boats to prevent drugs from getting to America and risks leapfrogging the U.S. into a war with Venezuela. You can't have it both ways, Mr. President. You can't talk a big game about hunting down drug traffickers and getting drugs off our streets and then turn around and free a dangerous, convicted drug lord. That sends a message to other criminals. Suck up to Trump, and you'll get a pardon no matter how many boatloads of drugs you pump into our streets. Even one Trump advisor admitted that, quote, how we justify this is really hard. Trump's pardon reeks of hypocrisy. It reeks of corruption, which is the MO of the Trump administration. The failure of the leadership at the Department of Defense is also a national embarrassment. The mess Secretary Hegseth creates regularly shows the consequences of picking an inexperienced Fox News host to lead a massively complex life-or-death federal agency. Donald Trump is learning it the hard way. If you pick a Fox News cable host to lead the largest, most complicated federal agency of all, you get burnt. And Hegseth is just way beyond what anyone would imagine in how bad he is at that department. In the past few days, more questions have arisen about Hegseth's order to attack alleged drug trafficking vessels off the coast of Venezuela. It is possible those strikes, which may have included verbal orders from the Secretary of Defense to, quote, kill everybody on those boats, violated the law. But this is the problem. The American people still don't know exactly what happened because Pete Hegseth refuses to tell the truth. Months ago, right after the strikes, Hegseth went on Fox News and bragged. He was present at every moment of the operation. He said on Fox News that he, quote, watched it live. He said the same to us in person. But then last night he tweeted that his admiral was actually the one who made all the combat decisions. This is so spineless. Pete Hegseth won't hesitate for a moment to talk a big game and take credit if he thinks it makes him look good. But the minute trouble arises, suddenly Hegseth says someone else was making the decision. Now let's be very clear about something. There's a very easy way for the American people to get the truth. Pete Hegseth should release the full tapes of the September 2nd attack, both the first and second strike. Not a clip, not some edited or redacted snippet. The full unedited tapes of each strike must be released so the American people can see what happened with their own eyes. Now, Pete Hegseth says he did nothing wrong, so prove it. If it's true, he should have nothing to fear from the truth. But if he refuses to release the tapes, if he stonewalls, if he keeps hiding the facts, then the question becomes unavoidable. What is Pete Hegseth hiding? What does Pete Hegseth not want the American people to see? Is it that his story doesn't add up? We don't know. because Pete Hegseth is right now hiding the truth. And sadly, that has become a theme with this administration. When facts are inconvenienced, they cover up. So, Secretary Hegseth, release the tapes. I also want to commend my Senate colleagues, including the chairman and ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, Senators Wicker and Reed, for working together in good faith in a bipartisan way to conduct oversight of these boat strikes. I support those efforts wholeheartedly. One of the first things we need is a classified briefing from the DoD, the Department of Defense, about exactly what happened during these operations. And let me be clear, Secretary Hegseth must be part of those briefings. We need documentation, and we need the tapes, but we should go one step further. Secretary Hegseth should testify publicly before the committee under oath so that the American people can hear the facts. The truth should not be kept behind closed doors. The fresh air of public scrutiny should be let in. The public has a right to know. That's why Pete Hegseth must testify publicly, and most importantly, why he must release the full tape of the attacks. On health care, let me start with a shockingly candid quote from a senior House Republican on their plan to fix health care. This senior House Republican, when it came to health care, said about the Republicans in the House, "We're nowhere on health care." That's what a senior House Republican said. It's a grim thing to say, but it's the truth. There's never been a clearer divide on what Democrats want on health care and what Republicans want on health care. Democrats want to lower health care costs for families. We want to make health care cheaper, more effective, more accessible. We're united on that issue, from one end of the party to the other. Republicans, meanwhile, are a total mess when it comes to health care. Republicans don't know what to do. One day, Trump floats a so-called health care plan. The next day, Speaker Johnson forces him to shoot it down. Some Republicans say they want to dismantle the ACA, probably a majority of them in the House and a large number in the Senate, just dismantle it altogether. Other Republicans seem more focused on eradicating reproductive care in every state than helping people afford health care. The bottom line, Republicans are in total disarray on health care. And while Republicans continue the infighting, who's paying the price? The American people. The people whose premiums are going up by $500 to $1,000 a month. The people know that these people know that Trump and Republicans are to blame. America, we all know, is in a health care crisis, and Republicans are only adding fuel to the fire. Democrats have been clear from the start. The first step to solve this crisis is extending the ACA tax credits. Democrats are ready to do so. We're united, and we're committed to lowering the cost of health care. Republicans, however, by their own admission, are nowhere on health care, and that's a disastrous message to send to the American people who are suffering from skyrocketing health care costs. I yield the floor. Note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsterbrooks.
I recognize the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. President, the Senate, a quorum call.
Yes.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the Democrat leader was just talking about health care And obviously, there's been a lot of conversation around that here these past few weeks and months. In fact, the Democrats shut down the government for 43 days, the longest shutdown in history, allegedly over health care, although I think we all know that it was Trump derangement syndrome more than anything else that led to the government shutdown. But I would just say, because sometimes you have to kind of take a walk down memory lane to remind people that facts are stubborn things. And facts are stubborn things. The Democrat leader implied that Republicans are not interested in lowering health care costs and that somehow they are. The contrary is actually the truth. If you look at what has happened since the Obamacare exchanges went live over 10 years ago, health care premiums on the exchanges have gone up on average 221%. 221% increase, Mr. President, in health care premiums in the individual marketplace on the Obamacare exchanges. Now, you might ask, why is that? There are a lot of reasons behind it. When they put the law into place in the first place, it was flawed structurally, but then he referred to these so-called Biden COVID bonuses, which were the enhancements that the Democrats now want to lock into place. Now remember, this was done in 2021 with the Democrat majority, Democrat in the White House, under reconciliation. So there wasn't a single Republican who voted for these enhancements in the first place. But remember, they were enhancements designed to be responsive to the pandemic. They were COVID bonuses, only supposed to be temporary. And then in 2022, they extended them again and set them up to expire at the end of this year. This is a problem of Democrats making, Mr. President, pure and simple. And so to suggest for a moment that Republicans somehow aren't interested in lowering health care costs, when in fact it's Democrat policies that have led to the run-up, the rampant increase, 221% increase in premiums since the exchanges went live over 10 years ago. You'd find me anything else in our economy that's seen that kind of an increase over that same time period, Mr. President. That's a staggering increase. And the Biden COVID bonuses that were enacted with all Democrat votes in 2021 and then extended again in 2022 and are set to expire at the end of this year were again designed to be a response to a COVID emergency which no longer exists. So what has happened? They locked in the Biden COVID bonuses that are set to expire at the end of this year, and they expect Republicans now to bail them out. Well, frankly, Mr. President, Republicans are interested in things that will drive down and lower health care costs. The other thing they did in 2022, which is sort of interesting, is that the base Obamacare policies covered people up to 400% of the poverty level. Well, today that's about, for a family of four, $128,000. So in the exchanges, you could get coverage, and if your health care insurance premiums hit a certain percentage of your income, anything above and beyond that was covered by a government subsidy. And that is, in fact, the way that it worked prior to 2021. The Biden COVID bonuses took that cap off, Mr. President. There is no cap. No cap. And so now you have people making $500,000, $600,000 a year who are getting subsidies from the federal government to buy insurance. The other thing they did, Mr. President, they did away with, there's what's called $0 policies or $0 premiums. In other words, there are people out there who pay nothing for coverage. Their coverage is entirely covered by the federal government through the subsidy. Well, what that's done, and because the way the program structured, they structured it, is to provide the subsidies directly to insurance companies. This is called, falsely, a premium tax credit. It is not a tax credit. A tax credit would be something that would lower tax liability dollar for dollar after when you file your income taxes. This is a subsidy, a direct subsidy. And so you have literally millions of people, Mr. President, who have no idea they're covered because they aren't paying anything for it. And the insurance companies are getting the payment. So the insurance companies are incentivized to go out and auto-enroll all these people across the country. And so what you have today are literally millions of people, of the 23 to 24 million people who get their coverage in the exchanges. Millions of those have no idea that they are even covered because the insurance company is getting the subsidy, auto-enrolling them, which might explain why last year 40% of the people who get their insurance coverage through the exchanges didn't file a claim. Now, you could say maybe they're healthy, maybe they're younger. That's all partially true. But do you think 40% of the people in the exchanges didn't file a claim? I mean, think about that. That means there are literally millions of people out there, millions of people who don't know they have coverage. And the insurance companies are getting the payments and making bank at the expense of everybody else in this country. And those who are paying premiums, seeing those premiums go up, as I said, 221% since these exchanges went live 10 years ago. So, Mr. President, this is not something the Republicans, they blame the Republicans for the health care crisis. The health care crisis was created by Democrats with all Democrat votes in 2021 and then again in 2022, setting them up to expire at the end of this year. And with no income limits and $0 premiums and the subsidies going directly to the insurance companies instead of into the pockets of the American people. Now, there is a way better way to do this, but it's going to take cooperation from both sides to do that. And it seems to me, at least, Mr. President, what the Democrats would rather have than a solution is an issue. They want a political issue, and they want to blame Republicans. But you have to come back to the basic premise that facts are stubborn things. These are the facts. 2021, these Biden COVID bonuses went into effect, lifted the cap. So no longer there's no cap. So you can get unlimited amounts of income and still get coverage in the exchanges. $0 premiums. So some people are paying nothing. They're paying nothing for their health insurance premiums. And insurance companies who are incentivized to auto-enroll those very people, in many cases, those people have no idea they're covered. That is a pretty amazing contraption, if you will, and some would argue scam on behalf of the insurance companies in this country, but certainly to the detriment of the American people who do need more affordable coverage. They need to be able to afford health care along with the other things that they buy on a daily basis. And people need access to health care in this country, Mr. President, and they need affordability when it comes to health care in this country. And so I would say, Mr. President, that there is a path forward here. It can't happen unless there are significant reforms. Because you can't have people who are making unlimited amounts of money being able to qualify for government subsidies in these exchanges. Nor should you have, in my view, people who pay absolutely nothing, not $1 for coverage, getting coverage, and insurance companies being incentivized because they get a subsidy for doing it to cover these very people who don't even know they're covered. That is a really, really bizarre business model. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. And now Democrats are saying, oh, we created this, but it's your problem. Please, please fix it. Or if you don't do something that will extend this program that has costs, premiums that continue to go up like this for the American people, we will use it against you in a political campaign as a political issue. That is the state of play right now, Mr. President, which is why we need a solution, and a solution that brings us back to where the American people have options, where there are some sort of income limits, where there are people at least paying something for their coverage, where the insurance companies aren't being enriched at the expense of the American people, where the American people have choices and options to get the plan that they want that works for them and for their families. That's a business model that works. Competition, optionality, market forces, driving down prices, giving the American people more choices to buy the insurance they want at a price that they can afford. That, Mr. President, is a business model. The business model that we're operating under today was created by the Democrats, and now there's some expectation that somehow the Republicans are supposed to come here and fix the problem that they created. So, Mr. President, let me get back to my remarks here and start by saying that last month, the incoming mayor of New York City, who's a leading voice in today's Democratic Party, promised New Yorkers, and I quote, "We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about." No problem too large, no concern too small for government to get involved. That was the quote, Mr. President. Mr. President, that's a dangerous way of thinking. It's a license for government growing unbounded. And it's a recipe for expanded bureaucracy and greater frustration for Americans who are just trying to live their lives. But growing government is the driving philosophy of the Democratic Party. And you can just look at the Biden years. We had the federal government mandating masks for 2-year-olds outside, not in a building, outside, for 2-year-olds. The EPA regulating puddles and saddling farmers and ranchers with massive compliance costs, something that we experienced in my state of South Dakota. Electric vehicle mandates. If they'd had their way, by next year, Mr. President, 35% of the vehicles on the highway would be EVs. 35%. You know what that number is today? It's about 10, 11, maybe 12. There's no way. No way that could have been complied with. And a reckless tax and spending spree that caused a years-long inflation crisis. Inflation got up the double-digit range, Mr. President, something we haven't seen in several decades. Mr. President, Republicans have spent the last year cleaning up from the consequences of Democrats' big government philosophy. President Trump has repealed a number of burdensome regulations and rules. And here in Congress, we've used the Congressional Review Act to repeal rules, regulations, and mandates that were creeping into seemingly every facet of Americans' lives. That includes 4 separate rules on appliances. That's right. Last year, appliances became the latest focus of Democrats' radical environmental agenda. One rule applied expensive, unnecessary new standards to commercial fridges and freezers, the kind used in restaurants and grocery stores. The Energy Department estimated that it would take 90 years for a business to see savings from these more expensive appliances. Another rule sought to take gas water heaters off the market, raising costs for homeowners and imperiling American manufacturing jobs. And then there were the Biden administration's proposed reporting and certification requirements for everything from light bulbs and dishwashers to dehumidifiers and air conditioners. Reporting and certification requirements may not sound like much, Mr. President, but those requirements mean a lot of front-end work that has to be done, work that costs time and money, can place a huge burden on businesses and drive up prices for consumers. In its public comments on the Biden administration's appliance standards, Carrier, an appliance manufacturer, said the Department of Energy failed to adequately account for, and I quote, the cost and burden to comply with updated requirements, end quote. A manufacturers association said that the proposed reporting standards had, and I quote, no practical utility, end quote. And another objected to what they called, quote, burden without benefit. Mr. President, thanks to Republicans' efforts, hardworking Americans and small businesses have been spared these costly regulations. We've also been able to dismantle Democrats' regulatory assault on Americans' cars. President Trump repealed the Biden administration's electric vehicle mandate. And here in Congress, we approved legislation to repeal waivers that would have allowed California to impose a de facto electric vehicle mandate on the whole country. We also passed a CRA resolution repealing the Biden rubber tire manufacturing rule, a gross example of unnecessary regulation. The Biden administration proposed new emission standards for tire manufacturers, an industry that's already subject to strict emissions rules. And the Biden rule, while it would have reduced the emission of certain pollutants, would have actually increased emissions of carbon dioxide and methane. That's right, Mr. President, you can't make that up. It would have increased emissions of carbon dioxide and methane. And it would have cost tire manufacturers $13 million per year and possibly more than that. Mr. President, unfortunately, these are not the only examples of the overreach of the Biden administration's Green New Deal-style regulations. No, the Biden administration also went after energy production, heaping additional costs and restrictions on energy producers that would have driven energy costs higher and higher. Earlier this year, Republicans repealed the Biden administration's marine archaeology rule. Energy producers are already required to submit an archaeological report before drilling in areas that are thought to include things like shipwrecks, settlements, and other archaeological sites. But the Biden administration wanted energy producers to submit reports even when there's no reason to suspect a project will be near an archaeological site. It was just another way to slow down production and heap more costs on energy producers, costs that would eventually have been paid by American consumers. Well, Mr. President, Republicans repealed that rule. Then there was Democrats' natural gas tax. In 2022, Democrats enacted a tax on methane emissions from natural gas producers, a tax that would have driven up energy prices and destroyed jobs in the energy sector. Republicans repealed its regulatory implementation through the CRA, the Congressional Review Act process, and then blocked this misguided tax in the One Big Beautiful Bill this summer. Mr. President, our efforts continue. A few weeks ago, the Senate passed a resolution blocking the Biden administration's restriction on energy development in the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska, an area established specifically for the purpose of providing the United States with energy resources. The Biden administration tried to close a significant portion of it. But when President Trump signs this resolution and repeals these restrictions, we will once again be able to leverage these abundant natural resources for the benefit of the American people. Mr. President, regulations have consequences. Democrats may believe there is nothing that couldn't be improved by a little government intervention. But Republicans, and I think the American people, know what too often happens when government decides to get involved. As President Reagan said 40 years ago, and I quote, "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, 'I'm from the government, and I'm here to help,'" end quote. When I'm talking to business owners in South Dakota, I often tell them to let me know how we can help, even if that means getting out of the way. And, Mr. President, that's often the right answer. While some regulations are necessary, too often regulations do more harm than good. And regulations mean costs, costs that are almost always passed on to the consumer. Republicans are continuing our efforts to get government out of the way and to bring down costs for the American people. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
President.
I recognize the Majority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, each year I look forward to spending Thanksgiving with Wyoming men and women in uniform who are serving overseas. I had the privilege of doing it again this year. This Thanksgiving, I was with Wyoming Airmen at Ramstein Air Force Base, which is in Germany. These young men and women came from Casper, Cheyenne, Riverton, serving our nation. They're doing an outstanding job in their work in supporting the missions in Europe, in Asia, and in the Middle East. They're a long way from home, 8 time zones away from Wyoming, away from family, away from friends, away for the holidays. And I go every year, wherever I can find Wyoming troops, to thank them for their service, to thank them for their commitment, to thank them for what they do to keep us safe and to keep us free, and the sacrifices that they're making. And I also want them to know that the people at home are thinking about them and know that they're a long way from home and caring for all of us. To me, they're heroes. They wear the uniform not for
their safety, but for ours. And we see it abroad, and we also see it at home. What we've seen at home is since August, National Guard troops have been deployed right here in Washington, D.C. As a result, Washington, D.C. is safer for residents and for visitors, for people who come from your state and from mine, who want to come and see the nation's capital. What we've seen since this has begun is the number of murders, rapes, and robberies has fallen dramatically. Tragically, just one day before Thanksgiving, 2 members of the National Guard were targeted. It was an ambush attack, and it happened just blocks away from the White House. It was an act of terrorism. The act was not only on our National Guardsmen, it was on our entire nation. One of the service members, Sarah Beckstrom, well, she was an Army specialist from West Virginia. She died on Thanksgiving Day. She was only 20 years old. The other is Andrew Wolf. He's a staff sergeant in the Air Force, also from West Virginia, 24 years old. He remains hospitalized in critical condition, fighting for his life. And we join all Americans in praying for them and their families. The terrorist who attacked them was an Afghan national. He's one of tens of thousands of Afghans who were flown into our country following Joe Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. We now know for a fact that thousands of these individuals were not properly vetted. I specifically questioned Joe Biden's Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, here in the Senate about this, and I questioned him under oath. And under oath, he testified, Joe Biden's Secretary of State, that, quote, most of them were not vetted. Didn't matter to Joe Biden. He waved them all into our country. Republicans warned repeatedly that bringing people without proper clearance from a war-torn country was a major national security risk. The negligent Biden administration ignored the warning. In 2021, 13 American heroes were killed in the botched withdrawal from Kabul, Afghanistan. One of them was Wyoming's own Riley McCullum. He embodied the best of Wyoming. He was a Marine. He joined the Marines on his 18th birthday. I spoke at his funeral. He was Wyoming's wrestling champion. He was about to become a father. He was just 20 years old when he died. He was the same age as Sarah Beckstrom from West Virginia. The fallout from Joe Biden's disastrous decision hurt Americans then, and it continues to hurt Americans today. President Trump and Republicans are working to reverse these failures. The president is strengthening law enforcement. He's deporting criminals who are here in our country illegally. And he's taking a hard look at anyone who has been improperly vetted. His actions will make America safer and more secure. Joe Biden's disgraceful withdrawal was not an isolated failure. It was part of a pattern of dangerous, destructive, and deadly policies. More than 10 million illegal immigrants entered our country under Joe Biden and the Democrats. Millions more are known gotaways. They are individuals who were seen by the Border Patrol but never charged, never stopped, never questioned. How many more terrorists slipped into our country because Democrats threw open the borders? Where are they now? What are they up to? We don't know. Most Americans understand that national security begins with border security. That means we must stop people from entering our country illegally. It means we must ensure dangerous individuals do not enter our country even through legal means. And it certainly means we must remove dangerous criminals who are in the country today. As the Trump administration recently warned, mass migration poses an existential threat to Western civilizations. So what do the Democrats think? Well, on Sunday on Face the Nation, CBS asked the junior senator from Virginia if the vetting process should be strengthened after the shooting. Now, that's exactly what President Trump is doing. The senator refused to answer that question. Instead, he told a national television audience that having the National Guard in Washington, D.C. was a, quote, political stunt. He blamed President Trump. Political stunt, it's a matter of public safety. President Trump is the one who is protecting American citizens from terrorist attacks, attacks like the one witnessed last week just in front of the White House. President Trump and Republicans want every American to be safe, to be secure, and to be prosperous. This is our top priority. After last week's brutal attack, securing our border and our communities is more urgent than ever. And Republicans are going to continue to remove criminals from the streets and get the terrorists out of the country. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
I recognize the Democratic Whip.
Mr. President, many of us bring life experiences to the Senate chamber, and it shapes our judgment on critical issues. When I was first married, my wife and I were blessed with a beautiful little baby girl. I was going to law school here in Washington, D.C. And it turns out our little girl had a serious medical problem. The difficulty I faced was the fact that I had no health insurance. I was a law student. And I ended up going to Children's Hospital here in Washington, D.C. with my wife and our little baby girl, and sitting in the charity ward that basically was there for people who couldn't pay their medical bills and had no health insurance. We waited for the door to open and for our family name to be called out to meet for the first time the doctor who was going to treat my little girl. I never felt more helpless in my life as a father to have that baby with that medical problem and to have no health insurance. I'm sure that colored my judgment the rest of my life in my service of over 40 years in Congress. I have always voted to give families a better chance of having health insurance. Having lived without it, I value it so much. It's been a major part of my feelings about health care and about the role of Congress. And so then 15 years ago, when President Obama, my former colleague from Illinois, was President of the United States and set out to achieve something that had never been done in the United States, to dramatically expand the coverage of health insurance to families that otherwise wouldn't qualify law or couldn't afford it. I worked hard to pass that bill. It took us a long time and a lot of effort. I was whip of the Senate Democrats at that point, and I used to go to Harry Reid's office several times a day to talk about the next step in passing the Affordable Care Act. The day finally came, and I won't dwell on the minutia or the details of how we reached it, but we did. Unfortunately, throughout that process, we never had one Republican vote of support, ever. We were fortunate to have 60 Democrats at the right moment politically to pass a bill in the United States Senate. I was sorry that the Republicans didn't join us in this effort. They could have made a better bill out of it, I'm sure of it, if they would have joined us, but they decided not to. And so for the last 15 years, the Affordable Care Act has offered to millions of Americans health insurance coverage, which was unthinkable before it passed. Let me give you a couple examples. There was a time when health insurance plans in the United States before the Affordable Care Act didn't cover mental health issues or addiction issues. You think to yourself, well, those are serious issues. They affect people's health. Why wouldn't they cover it? Because they're expensive, and they didn't want them. But two senators came out on the floor here, one a Democrat, Paul Wellstone of Minnesota, and the other a Republican, Pete Domenici of New Mexico, and pushed to include as a requirement in all health insurance plans that it covered mental illness. I supported that. My family, like most families, has a story to tell when it comes to mental illness, and I viewed it as an issue of health, not an issue of a curse that a person has to try to outlive. So we included it, and thank goodness we did. Not only did mental illness have health insurance coverage, but the addiction problem did as well. Just at the time we entered into the opioid addiction, which swamped the United States and needed this kind of a response in Congress. That was one thing. The second thing, before the Affordable Care Act, if you had any history of any illness, coverage would be excluded for that illness when you got your health insurance plan. So most plans were worthless for people who came into the market looking for health care coverage if they had any history whatsoever. That was eliminated, and I'm glad it was. We also extended health insurance coverage for children of families to age 26. The belief was simple. When your child, your son or your daughter graduates college and starts looking for a job, they may not have luck at the outset and may not have a full-time job when they finally do find employment. And they probably, in those days, had no health insurance offered to them as part-time employees. So we let young people stay under their family health insurance plan until they reach the age of 26. Those are the types of things that have been decried by many Republicans as socialism. Too much government, too much regulation. But it meant that the health insurance market was actually worth something to families who otherwise were excluded from it or found it too expensive. As I said, we passed that major legislation 15 years ago, roughly 15 years ago, at a time when not a single Republican would support it. Now we're back into a period, and I listened closely to the Republican leader this morning, where we're asking, what are we going to do moving forward? Here's the problem. For those people who had limited income, health insurance was beyond their reach. And so we offered a tax break, a tax credit for people to help pay their health insurance premiums. Otherwise, they were too expensive. That health insurance tax credit helped millions of American families afford health insurance, and we moved forward. But there came a time when the Republicans had a chance, and with their own majority, to address the Affordable Care Act, and they started eliminating that health insurance credit. As a consequence, many families, 24 million, we believe, nationwide, face the prospect that their health insurance premiums are going to be too high, increase dramatically beyond their reaches and family income. And that's exactly what's happening. Families across America who qualify for the Affordable Care Act health insurance tax credit are learning that their health insurance premiums are going up dramatically. I received letters and contacts from people in Illinois, which I'll put in the record in just a moment here. But Senator Thune, who is a friend, and the Republican leader of the Senate came to the floor this morning and pointed to two areas that he thinks need to be changed in the Affordable Care Act. One of them is whether your income level should be taken into consideration for the tax credit, and I believe it should, and he does too, I think. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's what I understood him to say this morning. And secondly, that there are zero premium policies that are being taken advantage of by some unethical people. I think those are two legitimate areas of debate. I want to offer, as a Democratic senator, my good offices and personal effort to try to fix those two problems if it means we can come together and restore tax credits for families that otherwise cannot afford their health insurance premiums. We're going to have a chance to do it, and it was Senator Thune who created that chance. He said the Democrats could offer a basic bill to improve the system, which I'm sure we will, and I hope that the Republicans may offer amendments to it or may have their own approach that we can debate leading into it. The problem is we have precious little time. It's supposed to be done before December the 12th, and that's only a few days away. And some of these changes are significant. We ought to take a little time to make sure we get them right. So I'm just saying as an offer, and I hope that the American people follow this closely, this Democrat, and I'm sure others as well on my side of the aisle, will sit down with Senator Thune to try to address the problems that he has raised this morning. There are legitimate concerns. We may see them a little differently, but let's discuss it. Let's do something we hardly ever do in the United States Senate anymore. Let's legislate. Let's do it on a bipartisan basis. They don't have 60 votes on their side of the aisle, nor do we. But if we come together, we can muster 60 votes for a good change and say to millions of Americans with health insurance premiums they can't afford, there's a way out of this. Let us extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits with some changes as suggested, but do it for a period of time that is reasonable and gives people peace of mind. If we're concerned about the cost of living and family budgets, for goodness sakes, it starts with health care. Health insurance premiums can be so high that people have no choice. Mr. President, I'd like to address another issue on a different topic. For more than 3 months, Chicago has endured President Trump's Operation Midway Blitz. It is a cruel campaign. It has swept up innocent citizens, legal American residents, and immigrants who pose absolutely no threat to public safety. Remember why the president wanted to send troops and more resources in the Department of Homeland Security into the city of Chicago? Because he was going after the worst of the worst. He was going after terrorists, murderers, rapists, the criminally insane who somehow got into this country, and he was going to make it safer by going after them. What has actually happened? The Trump administration justified their actions by saying that they were going after the worst of the worst, but what happened was just the opposite. Federal agents under President Trump have used excessive force in Chicago while patrolling our streets, including deploying pepper balls and tear gas into crowds, using zip ties to detain women and children, and physically tackling peaceful protesters to the ground. If you think I'm making this up, virtually everything I've just said is verified by video. In a hearing challenging the treatment of press and protesters by federal immigration agents, U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis said, and I quote, "The use of force shocks the conscience, and this conduct shows no sign of stopping," said the federal judge. In contrast to this judge's observation, Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino boasted in his deposition, almost mockingly, that, quote, "all uses of force have been more than exemplary." Well, I will just tell you, Mr. Bovino, look at the videotape. To rein in the lawlessness, Judge Ellis issued a preliminary injunction restricting the agent's use of chemical agents against protesters. Outside of a Lutheran church in Albany Park several weeks ago, after an 11 o'clock service broke up at about noon, the parishioners were leaving the church. The ICE agents were waiting on the sidewalk and dropped a tear gas canister in front of the church. The whistles were going off, and eventually ICE agents left. But do you think would-be terrorists were at that Lutheran service? I don't think so. It was harassment in that neighborhood. Judge Ellis issued a finding, a 233-page opinion, explaining her ruling and examining specific instances of federal immigration agents' use of excessive force. While the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals has temporarily paused that injunction, which she issued, while it considers the government's appeal, the court noted that Judge Ellis has, quote, "developed voluminous, robust factual findings of wrongdoing by these agents." And though some courts have acted as a critical guard against President's lawlessness, those rulings don't change the fact that the Trump administration's militarized raids are dangerous political theater meant to spread fear and advance an anti-immigrant agenda. After wreaking havoc in Illinois and now Charlotte, reports indicate the city of New Orleans is Greg Bovino's next target. So I asked my Republican colleagues, what if this Midway Blitz comes to your state, your hometown? What's stopping the president from sowing fear there, conducting lawless raids in your cities? It's up to all of us to denounce this kind of conduct. Just incidentally, they did a survey of the 600 of the people who've been arrested in Chicago on Midway Blitz going after the worst of the worst criminals. What percentage of those 600 do you think actually had any kind of criminal record that was serious? 2%. 16 of them. 16 people out of 600. Millions of dollars being spent to terrorize innocent people and to wreck these communities and their economies. And it turns out the return rate was 2%. 16 would-be criminals who are being brought to justice at the expense of our community. Mr. President, on a separate subject, just a few weeks that Affordable Care Act's enhanced premium tax credits are set to expire. We have precious little time to act. That means on January 1st of next year, millions of Americans will see their health insurance costs skyrocket and some will have to drop health insurance coverage completely because they just can't afford the premiums. Will they get sick? You bet. Will they go to the hospital? Many will. Will they get treated? Yes. Will they be able to pay their bills with their health insurance premiums? Unfortunately not if they drop coverage. That includes my constituent Jess, a hairstylist in Chicago, who was diagnosed with breast cancer last year. Jess said that if the tax credits go away as they're supposed to on January 1st, she'll be forced to pay more for health care and will have to make, quote, a lifestyle change to pay the difference, potentially working more shifts. She also worries about a lapse in coverage if the price increase forces her to switch plans. Any gap in coverage could jeopardize her life-saving cancer treatment. How would you like to have that hanging over your head? The premiums of your health insurance plan go through the roof, and you need constant coverage because of a diagnosis of breast cancer. No American family should face that. Here's the good news, though. We can make a difference here in the Senate. We can stop Americans like Jess from falling off this looming health care cliff. As part of the bipartisan agreement to end the longest government shutdown in American history, Leader Thune, who was on the floor this morning, gave me his word, and I accept it, that he will hold a vote in this chamber on extending these subsidies to Jess and others who desperately need help. Last week, reports emerged from the White House about plans to release a proposal that would extend these subsidies for 2 years. The president was supposedly supporting that. Imagine my surprise after trying to cut or repeal the Affordable Care Act more than 70 times after he promised on the campaign trail that he had, quote, concepts of a plan, whatever the heck that is. Finally, we were to see the details of the Republican health agenda for America. But congressional Republicans jumped all over the White House and told the president he couldn't do it. They threw cold water on the idea of the president cooperating with the Democrats to solve this problem. Now, the president's been tough to pin down on this subject, and Republicans know that they have a losing hand because they have no plan. So far, their signature accomplishment is a law that will kick 11 million Americans off of Medicaid and threatens to shutter rural hospitals in my state and others. It is my hope that the president and Republicans will come to the table and negotiate in good faith in the few days that remain in December of session. Let's do this together. Let's fix the tax credit that is available to families who struggle to pay health insurance premiums. If they don't, we'll put our proposal on the floor, and the American Party will see where each party stands when it comes to helping deserving American families who need a helping hand. If our offer on the Democratic side is rejected, the American public will know with every paycheck, with every prescription, with every hospital bill, which party stood on their side and which party didn't. This time to make a good faith effort on a bipartisan basis is now. Just 13 days from now is the deadline to enroll or change plans before the first of the year. Before and during the shutdown, my Republican colleagues argued that there was plenty of time to craft a fix before the subsidies expired. Well, the clock is ticking, and we need to act on a bipartisan basis. When I voted to end the government shutdown, it was controversial, but I said I would not wage a political strategy at the expense of my neighbor's paycheck or food for his family. I meant it. But I, too, cannot sit idly by while 20 million Americans go without gas or groceries in order to pay their health insurance premiums. This is a question of fundamentals. Will you be able to afford the health care you and your family need? Let's get this done on behalf of every American in red and blue communities alike. I yield the floor.
President.
Senator from Maine.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to waive the mandatory quorum call with respect to the Freeman nomination.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today to introduce the Improving Access to Workers' Compensation for Injured Federal Workers Act. I'm pleased that my colleague from Connecticut, Senator Blumenthal, is my lead co-sponsor on this bill. Our bipartisan bill would allow physician assistants and nurse practitioners to certify disabilities and oversee treatment for federal workers with injuries or illnesses that occur on the job, when doing so is consistent with the scope of their practice under state law. Mr. President, civil servants bring dedication, competence, and experience to their work, and this proposal affords them greater choice over their own health care in the event that they suffer a work-related injury or illness. Federal employees can already select a PA or an NP as their primary health care provider within the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program. However, and inexplicably, the Federal Employees Compensation Act permits only a physician to make the diagnosis, certify the injury and the extent of the disability, and to oversee the patient's treatments and care when a federal employee is injured on the job. This bill would allow the more than 2 million federal employees in our country, including more than 12,000 federal employees in the state of Maine, the ability to receive their health care from the practitioner of their choice after a work-related injury. When they can make their own choice, they have access to more timely care and continuity of care. They are also having the decisions about their health care and the extent of their disability or illness made by their primary care physician, who knows them best, who understands their health care history. Mainers, especially in our very rural communities, are often cared for by nurse practitioners or physician assistants. They act as their primary care providers. Let me give you an example. Jackie Carter and Corrine Malafont are two nurse practitioners with a primary care practice in Orland, Maine. They have described the challenges they face when they treat federal employees. Despite being the chosen healthcare provider of their federally employed patients, Jackie and Corrine are not authorized to certify their patients' injuries and illnesses and oversee the care for their work-related injuries under the Federal Employees Compensation Act. As a result, their patients can experience lengthy delays in starting treatment due to the requirement that only a physician can certify the injury and oversee the federal employee's care while in the workers' compensation program. In some very rural communities, Mr. President, and I expect this may be true in parts of your state as well, there simply aren't any physicians who are practicing, or they are unable to accommodate additional patients. So think about the situation that's created here. A federal employee who has a primary care provider who is a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant is injured on the job. But instead of immediately being able to go to this primary care provider, they have to wait until they can get in to see a physician who may be miles away and unable to see them quickly, a physician who does not know their history, and they can't proceed with getting the federal employees' benefits and health care treatments that they need to get well and return to work. That just makes no sense in rural America today. It is important to emphasize that this bill defers to state law. It would not expand the scope of any practice. Instead, it would simply remove a barrier that prevents dedicated healthcare professionals from practicing as their state permits them to do. NPs and PAs already provide a significant amount of health care to injured federal employees. But within the Federal Employees Compensation Act, while they are not currently authorized to certify injuries and oversee patient treatment, they are authorized to treat injured federal employees and be reimbursed for their services, but only in cases where a physician has first certified the injury and continues to oversee the treatment. That's redundant, it causes delays, and it does not make sense. Federal programs have long recognized the importance of nurse practitioners and physicians' assistants, yet the Federal Employees Compensation Act is an outlier in the restrictive nature of the program when it comes to NPs and PAs and their patients. Modernizing the Federal Employees Compensation Act through the reforms contained in this legislation would be consistent with the practices of numerous other federal agencies and programs, including Medicare, the Veterans Administration, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the Indian Health Service, and the Social Security Administration. They don't create this additional barrier. In rural communities, NPs and PAs may well be the only provider within a reasonable distance. Delaying the certification of injuries or illnesses for federal workers means delays in their care. And the longer those delays take, the longer before they can get the treatment they need to return to their jobs. I also want to note that this bill would not increase federal spending. The Congressional Budget Office has found that this bill would have an insignificant net effect on direct spending, reasoning that while it may increase access to care for injured federal employees, it would be offset by enabling them to return to work more quickly and to continue to serve the American people. Mr. President, passage of the Improving Access to Workers' Compensation for Injured Federal Workers Act is a winner across the board. It simply makes common sense. It provides our dedicated federal employees with additional health care options when they need it most. It allows NPs and PAs to share the knowledge they already have about their patients and treat their illnesses and injuries that are work-related in a timely fashion. I urge all of my colleagues to join Senator Blumenthal and me in supporting our bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
The youthful junior senator from West Virginia.
Youthful, I like that. I ask unanimous consent to complete my remarks prior to the scheduled roll call vote.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. Well, I would just tell everyone just this, all those up in the gallery, everybody. I'm probably going to need your prayers to get through this, because we have had something happen in the small but great state of West Virginia that absolutely is tragic beyond belief. I mean, look at these two young, beautiful people. We've lost Sarah, haven't we? And Andrew is just clinging for his life. West Virginia is really hurting, really hurting. Our National Guard's really hurting. But nowhere close, nowhere possible close to how these families are really hurting. So in every single way, I ask for your prayers. Just think of the call that came right before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving of all times of the year. Think about that call. Think about basically the senseless attack on America. But think about that call to these families and how bad really is. You see, in my little state of West Virginia, I just tell you this, the people are proud, the people are smart, the people are craftsmen, they're good people, they're loving people, they're neighbors. They're absolutely a people that are appreciative of all. It is amazing just how deeply appreciative they are when somebody does something that helps them in any way. I got to tell you this real quick. I had brown hair at one time and was really skinny. And I grew up in a little town of Beckley, West Virginia. I used to ride my bike absolutely from where we lived on a little dirt road, a little Red Dog road at the time, and Red Dog is something that they just make out of, coal piles that become slate and just got burnt, and they build a great road. But with all that being said, I'd ride my bike 8 miles across town to Little League practice. You see, I lived in Mayberry. That's all there is to it. I think about our National Guard. There's story after story. I was able to be the governor of the great state of West Virginia for 8 years, and I worked hand in hand with them. It was unbelievable what General Hoyer and General Crane and all the great people of the National Guard, they're phenomenal beyond all possible comparison. That's why Sarah and Andrew wanted to be guardsmen. Absolutely, they're unflat believable. I've been right in the middle of the flood, and my family happens to own the Greenbrier Hotel, and it's a little place in West Virginia. But with all that being said, with the terrible flood that happened in 2016, we hunted bodies on the golf courses and found 3 bodies on the golf courses, and we hunted for 6 weeks for a little 14-year-old girl, Michaela Phillips, and we found her 5 miles downstream 6 weeks later. I've been with the National Guard. I've seen every single part of the National Guard and just how great, and I mean great, these people are. I think, Joe, just at this time, please keep your focus on these families. Andrew is clinging to life and showing signs of goodness towards maybe coming through this. But life will be really, really tough, won't it? And Sarah, 20 years old, beautiful beyond belief, and gone. And why? Why? Why on earth? Why? Many of you may say this, they say, well, we don't agree with what the president's done. And I would say to you just this. I would say to you, how many body bags do we have to have in our cities to do something? What was he trying to do? What does he continue to try to do? He's trying every way in the world to give us Mayberry back to us, to give us what we all deserve in every single way. He's trying with all in him. My little town of Beckley, West Virginia, now has turned into, in many ways, not a great place from the standpoint of crime. If you ask Jim Justice this, if you said to Jim Justice, well, you know, I tell you what we've got 3 Canadian mounted police that can come to Beckley, West Virginia and can really make a difference. They can really help. Who would turn that down? Who would say, no, we don't want to do that? No, we don't want to do that because that's going to infringe on somebody or whatever it may be. Do you not realize every day that goes by it gets worse? We got to do something. I would say, if this isn't the answer, then you fix it. Because we want to be Mayberry. We deserve to be Mayberry. Last thing I'd say is just this. America, please listen to me and listen now. What in the world's happened to us? What in the world has happened to us? Is the next thing you don't have enough deadbolts or locks on your front door of your house or your back door? Are we going to absolutely lock our bedrooms when we go to bed at night? Because we'll put locks on that too. America, something's really wrong. And we got to really do something about it. From the standpoint of Congress, are we dysfunctional? You're daggum right in a lot of ways. I haven't been here very long, but I see absolutely the food fight going on all the time and the respect level almost non-existent. That's bad. We should absolutely respect one another, and we should look at each other's views and opinions and honor them. And we don't. And vote after vote after vote after vote, 51-49. It's not good. It's not good, America. And it's not a game. You see, at the end of the rainbow, on every single thing we do here, there's a name. Today, the name or names are Sarah and Andrew. In America, please, let's not gloss over. Let's absolutely let them have the opportunity to be a change of who we are. Think about what they've given. Think about how many are hurting. Absolutely, first and foremost, again, I ask for your prayers for these great, great, great young people and their unbelievable families. God bless each and every one of them. And God bless this great nation. And let's do something about it. Absolutely, let's let them change America. Don't forget them. Don't forget them no matter what you do. Don't ever forget them. Mr. President, I yield.
Under the previous order, the Senate will proceed to executive session to resume consideration of the following nomination, which the clerk will report.
Nomination, the Judiciary, David A. Bragdon of North Carolina, to be a United States District Judge for the Middle District of North Carolina.
Question occurs on the nomination. Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Blood Rochester. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Britt. Mr. Budd. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Curtis. Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. Ms. Ernst. Mr. Fetterman. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Gallego. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Husted. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Justice. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kim. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Langford. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lujan. Ms. Lummis. Mr. Markey. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Merkley. Mrs. Moody. Mr. Moran. Mr. Marino. Mr. Mullen. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Paul. Mr. Peters. Mr. Reed. Mr. Ricketts. Mr. Risch. Ms. Rosen. Mr. Rounds. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schiff. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Scott of Florida. Mr. Scott of South Carolina. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Sheehy. Ms. Slotkin, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young. Senators voting in the affirmative: Banks, Kramer, Daines, Haggerty, Hawley, Justice, Kennedy, Lankford, Lee, Ricketts, Risch, Rounds, Sheehy, Wicker. Senators voting in the negative: Cantwell, Peters, Reed, Schatz, and Warner. Ms. Warren. Ms. Warren, no. Ms. Baldwin. Ms. Baldwin, no. Mr. Markey. Mr. Markey, no. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Merkley, no. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, aye. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McConnell, aye. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sanders, no. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Schumer. No. Mr. Young. Mr. Young. Aye. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Wyden. No. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blumenthal. No. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mrs. Gillibrand. No. Mr. Murphy. Mr. Murphy. No. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse. No. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto. No. Mr. Marshall. Mr. Marshall. Aye. Mrs. Murray. Mrs. Murray. No. Mr. Curtis. Mr. Curtis. Aye. Mr. Marino. Mr. Marino. Aye. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Crapo. Aye. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Cornyn. Aye. Ms. Rosen. Ms. Rosen. No. Mrs. Capito. Mrs. Capito. Aye. Ms. Hassan. Ms. Hassan. No. Mr. Mullen. Mr. Mullen. Aye. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Ossoff. No. Mr. Booker. Mr. Booker. No. Mr. Gallego. Mr. Gallego. No. Mr. Cassidy. Mr. Cassidy. Aye. Mr. Lujan. Mr. Lujan. No. Mrs. Blackburn. Mrs. Blackburn. Aye. Mr. Kim. Mr. Kim. No. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Heinrich. No. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Hoven. Aye. Mr. King. Mr. King. No. Ms. Blunt Rochester. Ms. Blunt Rochester. No. Mrs. Hyde Smith. Mrs. Hyde Smith. Aye. Ms. Murkowski. Ms. Murkowski. Aye. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Cotton. Aye. Mr. Hickenlooper. Mr. Hickenlooper. No. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Barrasso. Aye. Mr. Schiff. Mr. Schiff. No. Mr. Moran. Mr. Moran. Aye. Mr. Warnock. Mr. Warnock. No. Ms. Alsobrooks. Ms. Alsobrooks. No. Mr. McCormick. Mr. McCormick. Aye. Mr. Budd. Mr. Budd. Aye. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Padilla. No. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson. Aye. Ms. Ernst. Ms. Ernst. Aye. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott of Florida. Aye. Mrs. Britt. Mrs. Britt. Aye. Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul. Aye. Ms. Lummis. Ms. Lummis. Aye. No. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett. No. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Durbin. No. Ms. Klobuchar. Ms. Klobuchar. No. Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan. Aye. Ms. Slotkin. Ms. Slotkin. No. Mrs. Moody. Mrs. Moody. Aye. Ms. Collins. Ms. Collins. Aye. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Grassley. Aye. Ms. Smith. Ms. Smith. No. Mr. Husted. Mr. Husted. Aye. Mr. Thune. Mr. Thune. Aye. Mrs. Fisher. Mrs. Fisher. Aye. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Cruz, aye. Mr. Van Hollen. Mr. Van Hollen, no. Mr. Welch. Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Tuberville. Mr. Tuberville, aye. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt, aye. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kane, no. Mr. Coons. Mr. Coons, no. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tillis, aye. Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Bozeman, aye. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, no. Mr. Shaheen. Mrs. Shaheen, no. Ms. Hirono. Ms. Hirono, no.
On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 45, and the nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made laid and laid upon the table, and the President will be immediately notified of the Senate's actions.
Mr. President.
Mr. Whip.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to be recognized for up to 15 seconds.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I have 5 requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of both the majority and the minority leaders.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion, we the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Lindsey Freeman of North Carolina to be United States District Judge for the Middle District of North Carolina, signed by 17 senators.
Under the previous order, the mandatory quorum call under Rule 22 has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the nomination of Lindsey Freeman of North Carolina to be United States District Judge for the Middle District of North Carolina shall be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Brooks. Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Rochester. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Britt. Mr. Budd. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Curtis. Thank you. Mr. Daines. Good, how are you? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. I got you. Ms. Ernst. Mr. Fetterman. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Gallego. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Husted. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Justice. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kim. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Langford. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lujan. Ms. Lummis. Mr. Markey. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Merkley. Thank you. Mrs. Moody. Mr. Moran. Mr. Marino. Mr. Mullen.
Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, thank you, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Paul, Mr. Peters, Mr. Reed, Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Risch, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Sheehy, Ms. Slotkin, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, thanks, Mr. Wyden, I got you, Mr. Young, Senators voting in the affirmative: Barrasso, Blackburn, Cassidy, Cruz, Curtis, Durbin, Ernst, Fisher, Husted, Johnson, Kane, King, Langford, Marino, Rosen, Scott of Florida, Sheehy, Sullivan, and Tillis. Mr. Schmidt, aye. Mr. Bozeman, aye. Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, aye. Senators voting in the negative: Bennett, Kelly, Merkley, Sanders, Schatz, Smith, and Welch. Mr. Risch, aye. Mr. Kramer, aye. Ms. Hirono, no. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. Reed, no. Mr. Mullen, aye. Mr. Schumer, no. Mrs. Shaheen, aye. Ms. Blunt Rochester, no. Mr. Heinrich, no. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Ms. Moran, aye. Mr. Murphy? No. Mrs. Hyde-Smith, aye. Mr. Wyden? No. Ms. Cortez Masto? No. Mr. Banks, aye. Mr. Lee, aye. Ms. Lummis? Aye. Mrs. Capito? Aye. Ms. Collins, aye. Mr. Padilla, no. Ms. Cantwell, no. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Ms. Hassan, aye. Mr. Budd, aye. Wow, we only need 43. Mr. Crapo, aye. Mrs. Britt, aye. Mr. Justice, aye. Mr. Schiff, no. Mr. Ricketts, aye. Mr. Coons, no. Mrs. Moody, aye. Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. Grassley, aye. Ms. Baldwin, no. Mr. Peters, aye. Mr. Paul, aye. Mr. Tuberville, aye. Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Ossoff, no. Ms. Slotkin, no. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Mr. Cotton, aye. Mr. Rounds, aye. Mrs. Murray, no. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Daines, aye. Mr. Kim, no. Mr. Markey, no. Mr. Hawley, aye. Mr. McCormick, aye. Mr. Hickenlooper, no. Mr. Hoven, aye. Ms. Alsobrooks, no. Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. McConnell, aye. Mr. Wicker, aye. Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Warner? No.
Mr. Haggerty, aye. Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Mr. Van Hollen, no. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, aye. Mr. Booker, no. Mr. Whitehouse, aye.
The yeas are 61, the nays are 36. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, the judiciary, Lindsey Freeman of North Carolina to be United States District Judge for the Middle District of North Carolina.
Under the previous order, the Senate stands in recess until 2:15 p.m.